That Thanksgiving evening, amid clinking plates and the greasy scent of turkey, my mother-in-law stood up, pointed straight at me in front of the entire family, worthless. My husband stayed silent. I set down my fork, swallowing the burning sensation crawling up my throat. They thought I'd cry, but that night, I opened the folder she'd signed 3 years ago. And by dessert, I had witnesses ready, a lawyer on speed dial, and a deed in lieu waiting for ink to dry. My name is Rachel Monroe, and until that Thanksgiving, I'd convinced myself that keeping peace was worth more than keeping score. The Grant house in Maple Bridge always smelled like cinnamon and butter during holidays, that kind of manufactured warmth that suburban families perfect for Instagram. Eleanor had draped the dining table with a maple leaf runner, each place setting arranged with military precision. The chandelier cast golden pools across the china wedding china. She'd remind us, from her mother's collection. I'd arrived at 4:30 sharp, carrying my assigned contribution, a store-bought pie Eleanor would later call thoughtful in that tone that meant anything but. Daniel had picked me up from our rental apartment, his jaw already tight with the pre-dinner tension that descended whenever we approached his childhood home. "Just a few hours," he'd murmured, squeezing my hand at the doorstep. "We'll eat, make nice, and leave." The trouble started before the turkey was even carved. Eleanor held court from the head of the table, Martin silent beside her, while Daniel's sister Brielle live-streamed the spread for her followers. I sat between Daniel and his uncle, a man who communicated primarily through grunts and bourbon. "Of course, when Daniel was at Wharton," Eleanor began, her voice pitched to Carrie, "we never imagined he'd end up, well," her eyes flicked to me. "Sometimes our children make choices we don't understand." The knife scraped against turkey breast. Someone's wine glass clinked against a plate. "Mom," Daniel said quietly. "Oh, I'm not criticizing," Eleanor continued, sawing through meat with surgical precision. "I'm sure Rachel has her reasons for leaving Harbor and Field, though in this economy, one wonders about the wisdom of being voluntarily unemployed." "I'm transitioning careers," I said, keeping my voice level. "It's a planned move." "Planned?" She smiled, teeth white as the china. "That's what my hairdresser's daughter said before she moved back home. 34 and living in her childhood bedroom." "I'm 36, I corrected. "Even worse." She passed the carved turkey to Martin. "At least when I was raising children, I contributed. I made Daniel and Brielle my career. Every sacrifice, every penny saved, every opportunity I created, it all went to them. This house, this table, this life we built, it's all for family, real family, people who contribute." Brielle's phone captured it all, the ring light reflecting in her eyes as she zoomed in on the cranberry sauce. "Some of us," Eleanor said, accepting the gravy boat without looking at me, "understand that marriage means building something together, not, what's that term? Coasting. Yes, not coasting on someone else's hard work." Daniel's hand found mine under the table, but he didn't speak. His thumb rubbed a small circle on my palm, an apology. Maybe. Or just nervous habit. "I supported Daniel through his MBA, I said. Paid rent for 2 years while he studied. With money from a job you no longer have." Eleanor's smile never wavered. "Past contributions don't pay current bills, dear." Martin coughed. Brielle angled her phone for a better shot. The uncle reached for more bourbon. Then Eleanor stood, raising her glass of Pinot Grigio. The room fell silent except for the grandfather clock ticking in the hallway. "A toast," she announced. "To family. To those who build rather than tear down. To contributors, not takers." She looked directly at me, her eyes hard as winter ground. "And to those who know their place in this house." She paused, letting the words settle like dust. "Because Rachel," she said, voice sharp enough to slice through bone, "in this family, in this house that we built with our sweat and sacrifice, you are worthless. Absolutely worthless." The word hung in the air like a blade. Daniel's hand went slack in mine. Brielle's phone lowered slightly. Even the uncle looked up from his glass. I set down my fork with deliberate care, feeling the burn rise from my chest to my throat. My fingers found the edge of the linen napkin, and I dabbed my lips once, twice. The motion was automatic, buying time while my mind shifted from shock to something colder, more precise. "This house," I repeated softly. "The one you built." "Every brick," Eleanor confirmed, sitting back down with the satisfaction of someone who'd just won a hand of cards. 28 years of mortgage payments, our credit, our signatures, our sacrifice. I nodded slowly, letting her words echo. Our signatures. The phrase lodged in my mind like a seed, already sprouting roots. "Excuse me," I said, standing. "I need to use the powder room." But I didn't go to the powder room. I went to the kitchen, where my purse sat on the counter, and pulled out my phone. My fingers moved with practiced efficiency, opening the cloud storage where I kept all our financial documents. There it was, dated 3 years ago. Eleanor Grant's signature on a promissory note for $85,000, secured by a deed of trust on this very house. The house she'd just claimed was built entirely on their sacrifice. I looked through the kitchen doorway at Eleanor holding court, Daniel silent beside her, and felt something shift inside me. Not rage. Rage was hot and reckless. This was different. This was cold, precise, calculated. The drive back to our rental apartment took 17 minutes. Daniel didn't speak, his hands gripping the steering wheel like it might escape. I stared out the window at Maple Bridge's perfect lawns, each one edged with identical precision, and said nothing. When he pulled into our assigned parking spot, he finally broke. She didn't mean it that way. I looked at him, really looked. 3 years of marriage, and he still had that boy's habit of shrinking when his mother raised her voice. "Good night, Daniel." Inside, I didn't turn on the lights. The street lamp outside cast enough glow through the blinds to navigate to my home office, a corner of the bedroom with a desk and a fireproof filing cabinet I'd bought when I was still making 6 figures at Harbor and Field. The lock clicked open with a familiar sound. The folder was exactly where I'd left it, labeled Grant Loan 2021 in my neat handwriting. I spread the documents across the desk like tarot cards, each one telling a piece of the story Eleanor had conveniently forgotten. The promissory note came first, $85,000, loaned from my personal savings to Eleanor and Martin Grant. Interest rate 4% annually, payment schedule monthly, starting January 2022. The reason for the loan was documented in my email records: Martin's emergency heart surgery, insurance gaps, medical bills threatening to force them into bankruptcy. "Please," Eleanor had begged in her email from November 15th, 2021 at 11:43 p.m. "Your family. We have nowhere else to turn." I'd wired the money the next morning. The deed of trust came next, recorded with the county, a second position lien on the Grant house, subordinate only to their original mortgage with First National. Their signatures were notarized, witnessed, completely legal. In my former line of work, I'd learned to document everything. I opened my laptop and pulled up the payment history. Eleanor had made exactly 6 payments before the excuses started. "Just until Martin's back at work. The holidays are so expensive." "Next month, I promise." The last payment received June 2022. Current balance with accrued interest $91,437. My phone buzzed. "Daniel, please come to bed. We can talk about this tomorrow." I didn't respond. Instead, I logged into the county assessor's website. The Grant house purchased in 1996 for $170,000, current tax assessment at $420,000. First mortgage balance, according to the public records, approximately $40,000 remaining. My lien $91,000. Their equity after both liens roughly $290,000. The next search took me to the tax records. Property taxes for 2024 delinquent by 3 months. Amount owed $4,200. Not enough for tax foreclosure yet, but it showed a pattern. I screenshotted everything. At 1:15 a.m., I opened a new spreadsheet. Column A, timeline of events. Column B, legal requirements for notice of default in Pennsylvania. Column C, options for resolution. My fingers moved with the same precision I'd once used to restructure million-dollar portfolios. Option 1, forgive the debt. Preserve the family peace. I typed it, then deleted it. Option 2, negotiate a payment plan. I'd tried that. The emails proved it. Option 3, notice of default, right to cure, foreclosure proceedings if necessary. Option 4, I paused, fingers hovering over the keys. There was another way, cleaner, a deed in lieu of foreclosure. They sign the house over. I forgive the debt. Their credit stays intact. I could even offer a lease back. Let them stay as tenants. Generous, considering. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Eleanor, probably drunk on her third glass of wine. I hope you understand a tough love. Someone needs to motivate you to contribute. I screenshotted that too. By 2:30 a.m., I had everything organized. Payment history highlighting 18 months of default. Email correspondence showing my attempts to work with them. The original loan documents, pristine and legal. Current title report I'd ordered online showing my lien properly recorded. Pennsylvania foreclosure law bookmarked in my browser. The clincher came when I checked my old Harbor and Field contacts and found something interesting. Blue Gull Investments, a fund that specialized in distressed debt, had recently purchased First National's mortgage portfolio, including, according to my source, the grant's first mortgage. The managing partner, someone I'd worked with before, responded to my after-hours email within minutes. Rachel Longtime. Yes, we have that note. 42,000 balance. Why? Hypothetically. I typed back. What would you sell it for? For you, 35. These old portfolios are just paper to us. 35,000 to own the senior position. Combined with my junior lien, I'd control both notes on the house. Total investment $120,000 for a property worth $420,000. But this wasn't about money. I closed the laptop and sat in the dark, listening to Daniel's snoring from the bedroom. Outside, Maple Bridge slept its suburban sleep, every house a fortress of family secrets. Eleanor thought she'd won tonight, putting me in my place with her words. Tomorrow, I'd call Ava Dempsey at Dempsey and Vale. We'd worked together before when Harbor and Field needed local counsel. She specialized in real estate litigation, particularly foreclosures. Quick, clean, no drama unless necessary. I picked up the promissory note, Eleanor's signature bold and confident from 3 years ago when she'd needed my money, when I was valuable, when I was family. Worthless, I whispered to the dark. We'd see about that. The offices of Dempsey and Vale occupied the 3rd floor of a restored Victorian in downtown Maple Bridge, all exposed brick and modern glass partitions. Ava Dempsey met me at 9 a.m., sharp, her silver hair pulled back in a twist that meant business. Rachel Monroe, she said, extending her hand. I wondered when you'd resurface. Heard you left Harbor and Field. Career transition, I said, settling into the leather chair across from her desk. But that's not why I'm here. I laid out the documents in chronological order. Ava's expression didn't change as she reviewed them, occasionally making notes on her legal pad. When she reached Eleanor's emails, one eyebrow lifted slightly. Clean paper, she said finally. Properly recorded, notarized, all requirements met. They've defaulted for 18 months. You have grounds. She looked up. What outcome are you seeking? I want to own the house, I said, but I want to do it right. No gray areas, no legal challenges later. Ava leaned back. Foreclosure is messy. Public auction, redemption periods, potential deficiency judgments. There's a cleaner way. She pulled out a fresh pad. Deed in lieu of foreclosure. They voluntarily transfer the property to you. You forgive the debt. Their credit takes a hit, but not as bad as foreclosure. You could even offer a leaseback agreement. Let them stay as tenants. For how long? 30 days, 45, whatever you're comfortable with. Market rent or below. Your choice. She studied me. You're being generous. Considering. I want to control the senior note too, I said, sliding over my phone with the Blue Gull correspondence. Ava whistled low. 35 for a 42,000 note, if you hold both positions. She did quick math. You'd have complete control. No other creditors could challenge. Smart. She made more notes. We'll need to structure this carefully. Set up an LLC to hold the positions. Keep your name off the immediate paperwork. Red Elm Holdings, I said. I already reserved the name. Of course you did. She smiled. I'll draft the operating agreement today. You'll be the sole member, but the LLC will be the face of all transactions. Cleaner that way. By 10:30, we'd mapped out the strategy. First, establish Red Elm Holdings. Second, purchase the senior note from Blue Gull. Third, send formal notice of default on my junior lien with a 30-day right to cure. Fourth, offer the deed in lieu as an alternative. Timeline, I asked. LLC formation, 2 days with expedited filing. Purchase agreement with Blue Gull, immediate if you have funds ready. Notice of default goes out certified mail. Return receipt requested. Pennsylvania law requires 30 days to cure. If they don't cure or accept the deed in lieu, we proceed to foreclosure. She calculated. 45 days total, assuming they don't cure. They won't, I said. They're 3 months behind on property taxes. You've done your homework. Ava pulled up her calendar. I'll need a retainer. 5,000 to start. I wrote the check without hesitation. 3 years ago, I'd written a much larger one to save Eleanor's house. This one was to take it. One more thing, Ava said as I stood to leave. The emotional component. Their family. This could destroy your marriage. I thought of Daniel's silence at that dinner table, his hand going slack in mine when his mother called me worthless. Some things are already destroyed, I said. Noah Riker at Crescent Title and Escrow was my next stop. His office smelled like coffee and toner ink, the walls lined with certificates and licenses. He'd handled the original loan documents 3 years ago. Ms. Monroe, he said, pulling up my file. I remember this transaction. Clean deed of trust, properly recorded. What can I do for you? I need to prepare for a possible deed in lieu transfer. I said, complete package, all documents ready. How fast can you move when the time comes? With proper signatures. Same day, we offer mobile notary services. E-recording with the county. The future is digital. He typed rapidly. I'll prepare the deed, transfer tax statements, title insurance updates. You'll need an estoppel certificate, settlement statement, possession agreement if there's a leaseback. Prepare for a 45-day leaseback at $1 per month, I said. His fingers paused. Generous terms. I'm not a monster, I said. Just a creditor seeking resolution. By noon, I'd set everything in motion. Red Elm Holdings LLC would exist by Wednesday. Blue Gull had sent the purchase agreement for the senior note, closing set for Friday. Ava would send the notice of default Monday, giving them until after Christmas to cure or respond. I met with my banker at 1:15 to arrange the wire to Blue Gull, $35,000, a fraction of what I'd saved during my years at Harbor and Field. The banker, who'd known me since I'd opened my first account, didn't ask questions. Investment property, she ventured. Something like that, I said. At 3 p.m., I sat in my car outside the Grant house, watching Eleanor's Mercedes in the driveway. Through the window, I could see her in the kitchen, probably preparing dinner for Martin. The house looked the same as it had for 28 years. She'd said, "There's blood and sweat in every brick, but paper doesn't lie, and signatures don't forget." My phone rang. Daniel. "Where are you? I came home for lunch and you weren't here." "Running errands," I said. "Mom called. She wants to apologize." I almost laughed. "Does she?" "She says she was harsh, whine and stress. You know how she gets." I know exactly how she gets, I said, watching Eleanor move past the window. Tell her no apology needed. Really, really. Everything will be resolved soon. You're being very understanding, Daniel said, relief flooding his voice. I'm being very practical, I corrected. After we hung up, I opened my email. Ava had sent the draft notice of default, formal and precise. Noah had sent the deed in lieu package, every line ready for signatures. Blue Gull confirmed Friday's closing. 3 years ago, Eleanor had sat in her kitchen, crying about medical bills, begging for help. I'd been valuable then, family then. Now I was worthless. But worthless people don't hold $91,000 liens. Worthless people don't control senior debt positions. Worthless people don't have lawyers on retainer and title companies on standby. I started the car and drove away from the Grant house. In 45 days, if everything went according to plan, I'd drive back. With the keys. The certified letter arrived at the Grant house on Tuesday, December 3rd at 2:17 p.m. I knew the exact time because I'd paid extra for delivery confirmation and real-time tracking. Eleanor signed for it herself, her signature captured digitally, transmitted instantly to my phone. The explosion came 43 minutes later. "What the hell is this?" Eleanor's voice screeched through my phone. I'd been expecting the call, sitting at my desk with Ava on speaker, recording everything with her consent. "It's a formal notice of default. Eleanor," I said calmly, "you haven't made a payment on the loan in 18 months. That was a family arrangement. You can't—" "It's a legally recorded deed of trust," I interrupted. "You have 30 days to cure the default. The amount needed is clearly stated in the notice. $91,000. That's insane. You gave us 85, plus 18 months of accrued interest at 4% annually, plus late fees as specified in the original agreement you signed." Silence. Then, quieter but more venomous. "You vindictive little bitch." "Eleanor," Ava's voice cut in smoothly. "This is Ava Dempsey, legal counsel for Red Elm Holdings. I'm recording this call with all parties' consent. Are you represented by counsel? Red Elm, who the hell is Red Elm? The current holder of your promissory note," Ava explained. "My client has assigned the note to Red Elm Holdings, which is now the creditor of record. Additionally, Red Elm has acquired the senior note on your property from Blue Gull Investments." The silence stretched longer this time. "The first mortgage," Martin's voice. Suddenly, he'd been listening. "Correct," Ava confirmed. "Red Elm Holdings now holds both the senior and junior positions on your property. Total debt $133,000 against a property assessed at $420,000. This is extortion," Eleanor spat. "This is business," Ava replied. "However, my client has authorized me to present an alternative resolution, a deed in lieu of foreclosure." "A what?" I took over, keeping my voice level. "You sign the house over to me to Red Elm voluntarily. In exchange, all debt is forgiven. No foreclosure on your credit report. No deficiency judgment. No public auction. You walk away clean. Walk away from our home. I'm also offering a 45-day leaseback at $1 per month." I continued. "Enough time to find alternative housing with dignity. After that, market rent if you choose to stay as tenants. You want us to pay you rent on our own house? It wouldn't be your house anymore," I said. "But it's better than foreclosure, where you'd be evicted immediately after the sheriff's sale." Another silence. I could hear muffled conversation. Eleanor's voice rising and falling. Daniel texted me, "What's happening? Mom's freaking out." I didn't respond. "I need to speak with my son," Eleanor finally said. "That's between you and Daniel," I replied. "The business matter is between Red Elm Holdings and the property owners of record. You have 30 days to respond." "You planned this," she accused. "That dinner. You sat there knowing—" "I sat there being called worthless," I cut in front of your entire family, after I saved your house 3 years ago when you were drowning in medical debt. That's what family does." "No," I said. "Family makes payments. Family keeps promises. Family doesn't humiliate the person who helped them. Daniel will divorce you for this. That's his choice. The notice of default stands regardless. 30 days. Eleanor. The deadline is January 2nd. She hung up. Within an hour, Daniel was home, pacing our small apartment like a caged animal. You're foreclosing on my parents. They're foreclosing on themselves, I corrected, not looking up from my laptop. I'm just the creditor. Rachel, this is insane. It's just money. We can work something out. We tried. For 18 months. Check my email history if you don't believe me. He ran his hands through his hair. Mom says you tricked them. Did I forge their signatures on the deed of trust? Did I fake the notary? Did I make them stop paying? I finally looked at him. Did I stand up at Thanksgiving dinner and call them worthless? She meant every word. I stood, facing him. And you sat there, silent, like you always do when she attacks me. She's my mother. And I'm your wife. Or I was supposed to be. His phone buzzed. Eleanor, no doubt. Then again. And again. She wants me to come over, he said. Go. Rachel. Go, Daniel. Choose your side. You always do anyway. He left. I turned back to my laptop, where Noah had sent the updated title report. Everything was clean, ready for transfer. The mobile notary was on standby. The e-recording system was tested and functional. At 8:45 p.m., Ava called. Martin Grant just left me a voicemail. They want to discuss terms. The terms are in the notice, I said. He seems more reasonable than Eleanor. He asked about the tax implications of a deed in lieu versus foreclosure. He was always the practical one. Should I set up a meeting? I thought about it. Yes, but at your office, not theirs. And I want everything in writing. Thursday at 2. Perfect. Daniel didn't come home that night. Or the next. On Thursday morning, he texted, staying at my parents'. We need space. Space. As if our 800-square-foot apartment hadn't been space enough when Eleanor called me worthless. At 1:30 p.m. Shh, I dressed carefully. Professional blazer, the one I'd worn to close million-dollar deals. Conservative jewelry. Hair pulled back. I looked like what I was a creditor with full legal standing. The Grants were already in Ava's conference room when I arrived. Eleanor wore sunglasses despite the gray December day. Martin looked tired, older. Daniel sat between them, avoiding my eyes. Mrs. Grant, I said, taking my seat across from them. Don't you dare! Eleanor started, but Martin touched her arm. We've reviewed the documentation, he said carefully. The legal standing appears solid. It is, Ava confirmed. The deed in lieu. Martin continued. Walk us through it again. Ava slid a folder across the table. Voluntary transfer of property to Red Elm Holdings. All debts forgiven, both the senior and junior notes. No foreclosure proceedings. Minimal credit impact. 45-day leaseback at $1 per month. Then option to continue as tenants at market rate. Market rate being $3,000 per month for a 4-bedroom house in Maple Bridge, I said. Eleanor laughed bitterly. You want $3,000 a month from retirees. I want you to have options, I replied, which is more than you gave me at Thanksgiving. This is about your ego. She pulled off her sunglasses, eyes red-rimmed. You're destroying our lives because I hurt your feelings. This is about $91,000 you borrowed and didn't repay, I said. Everything else is just context. Daniel, Eleanor turned to her son. Tell her, make her understand. Daniel looked at me for the first time since I'd walked in. Rachel, please, they're my parents. And they're my debtors, I said. You can't have it both ways. Daniel, either I'm family who deserves respect, or I'm worthless. Eleanor made that choice. Now I'm making mine. So this is revenge, Eleanor said. This is resolution, I corrected. You have 2 options. Sign the deed in lieu by January 2nd, or face foreclosure proceedings on January 3rd. Your choice. Martin studied the documents. If we find the money, pay off the entire debt. Then the liens are released and we all move forward, Ava said. Eleanor snorted. 91,000 in 30 days, plus the 42,000 senior note. You could take a home equity loan, I suggested. Oh, wait, you can't, because you're already in default with me and 3 months behind on property taxes. The room went quiet except for the hum of the heating system. We need time to consider, Martin finally said. You have 27 days, I replied, standing. Ava has my full authority to negotiate terms, but the principal amount is non-negotiable. I walked to the door, then paused. Oh, Eleanor, that toast you gave at Thanksgiving about knowing my place in your house. I looked back at her. Turns out you were right. I do know my place. And where's that? She asked, chin raised despite everything. At the closing table, I said, with the deed. The Crescent Title and Escrow Office hummed with efficiency on December 20th, 12 days before the deadline. Noah Riker had called me at 8 a.m. sharp. Ms. Monroe, I've prepared everything. The deed in lieu package is ready. All signature lines flagged, all disclosures included. We can execute the moment they agree. I sat across from him now, reviewing each document. The deed itself, warranty language intact, the estoppel certificate confirming the payoff amounts, the possession agreement detailing the 45-day leaseback, the settlement statement showing $0 due at closing debt forgiveness in exchange for property transfer. E-recording is set up, Noah continued, fingers flying across his keyboard. The county system accepts submissions until 4:30 p.m. on business days. Once recorded, ownership transfers immediately. No waiting period, no redemption rights, clean transfer. And if they don't sign, then we're looking at foreclosure proceedings. Sheriff's sale, public auction, potential deficiency judgments, messy, public, credit-destroying. He adjusted his glasses. The deed in lieu is infinitely preferable for them. My phone buzzed. Ava. They're negotiating, she said when I answered. Martin called. They want to modify terms. Which terms? The leaseback. They want 6 months at $1, then option to purchase back within a year. No, I didn't hesitate. 45 days is offered, no repurchase option. Rachel, that might push them to fight the foreclosure. Let them. I have both notes, proper documentation, and their default is undisputed. They'll lose and pay my legal fees on top of everything else. Ava sighed. I'll convey your position. 2 hours later, she called back. They want to meet. Tomorrow, December 21st, but not at my office. They want neutral ground. Where? The Maple Bridge Library, Conference Room B, 2 p.m. The library, public enough to prevent screaming, private enough for business. I'll be there. That evening, I sat alone in my apartment. Daniel's clothes still hanging in the closet like ghosts. He'd texted once, "This is destroying Mom." I'd responded, 18 months of non-payment destroyed this. I'm just administering the consequences. He didn't reply. December 21st arrived gray and sleeting. The library's conference room smelled like old books and lemon polish. I arrived first, spreading my documents on the table. Noah had provided 3 copies of everything, one for them, one for me, one for the notary. The grants entered at 2:05. Eleanor had aged years in 3 weeks, her usually perfect hair showing gray at the roots. Martin moved carefully, one hand on her elbow. Daniel followed, and behind him, unexpected Brielle. We're all here, Eleanor said, as if that meant something. The documents are ready, I replied, sliding a packet across the table. Wait, Brielle spoke up. I want to understand something. You loaned Mom and Dad money, and now you're taking their house. I loaned them $85,000 to save them from medical bankruptcy, I corrected. They signed a deed of trust securing that loan with their house. They haven't paid in 18 months. This is the legal remedy. But your family? Am I? I looked at Eleanor. Tell her what you called me at Thanksgiving. Eleanor's jaw tightened. Tell her, I repeated. This isn't relevant. Worthless, I said to Brielle. She called me worthless, in front of everyone. After I saved this house 3 years ago. Brielle looked at her mother, then back at me. So this is revenge? This is contract law, I said. Your parents took money and didn't repay it. The emotional context doesn't change the legal facts. Martin cleared his throat. We've been trying to gather the funds. And we can get 50,000. My brother can lend us 30, and we have 20 in savings. You need 91,000 for my note alone, plus 42 for the senior position. We know. Martin's hands trembled slightly as he opened his folder. We're asking for a partial payment and extended terms. No. Rachel, Daniel finally spoke. Please, it's Christmas. It was Thanksgiving when your mother humiliated me. Where was your concern for family then? I'm sorry I didn't defend you. Too late. I turned to Martin. You have 11 days. Sign the deed in lieu or face foreclosure. Eleanor leaned forward. You want to see us homeless? I offered you 45 days leaseback and the option to stay as tenants. That's hardly homeless. Paying you rent on our own house. It won't be your house, I reminded her. It will be mine, just like my money became yours 3 years ago. Except I'm offering you terms. You offered me humiliation. The sleet hit the windows harder, filling the silence. Martin pulled out a pen. If we sign today. Eleanor grabbed his arm. Martin, no. Elle, we don't have options. He looked at me. If we sign today, can we have until February 1st for the leaseback? It's hard finding rentals over the holidays. I considered. January 31st. 6 weeks instead of 45 days. Final offer. And the rent, after $2,500 per month, month-to-month lease, below market, but no long-term commitment from either side. Martin nodded slowly. We need a moment. I stepped out into the hallway, watching the sleet streak the windows. My phone showed 3:15 p.m. Noah could still e-record today if they signed within the hour. Inside, voices rose and fell. Eleanor's sharp tones, Martin's measured responses, Daniel's pleading, Brielle's questions. At 3:32, the door opened. We'll sign, Martin said quietly. Get your notary. I called Noah. They're ready. Send the mobile notary to the library now. On her way. She'll be there in 15 minutes. I returned to the conference room. Eleanor stared at the table, defeated. Daniel wouldn't look at me. Brielle typed frantically on her phone, probably posting about this family drama to her followers. The notary is coming, I said. Once you sign, it's final. No reversal, no redemption period. The house transfers to Red Elm Holdings immediately upon recording. We understand, Martin said. Eleanor suddenly looked up, eyes blazing with one last fight. I hope you're proud of yourself. You've destroyed this family. No, I said calmly. You destroyed it at Thanksgiving dinner. I'm just signing the paperwork. The mobile notary arrived at 3:48, an efficient woman named Patricia who'd clearly done this hundreds of times. She checked IDs, arranged documents, positioned her stamp. Who's signing first? Martin picked up the pen. His signature on the deed in lieu was steady, deliberate. Each initial on each page, methodical and final. Eleanor's hand shook as she signed. But she signed. Now the acknowledgement, Patricia instructed. This confirms you're signing voluntarily, without coercion. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. More signatures. The possession agreement, the estoppel certificate, the settlement statement showing 0 cash changing hands, just debt for deed. Finally, Patricia turned to me. As the grantee, you need to sign the acceptance. I took the pen, feeling its weight. 3 years of insults, of being treated as less than, of saving them only to be called worthless. It all came down to this signature. I signed my name with a steady hand. Patricia notarized everything with practiced efficiency, her stamp hitting each document with a sound like judgment. That's all, she announced. Mr. Riker will handle the recording. I called Noah. Documents are executed, ready for e-recording. Sending them through now, he confirmed. You should have confirmation within 30 minutes. I gathered my copies, placing them carefully in my briefcase. The grants sat frozen, as if movement might make it more real. You have until January 31st, I said. I'll have the lease agreement for post-leaseback ready by January 15th if you choose to stay. I walked to the door, then turned back one last time. Eleanor, that house you built with your sweat and sacrifice, the one where I had no place, no value. I met her eyes. It's mine now, and you're right, I do know my place in it. Where's that? She asked, her voice barely a whisper. At the top of the deed. Sunday, December 22nd, 4 p.m. The Grant house looked different somehow, though nothing had physically changed. The same colonial facade, the same black shutters, the same brass door knocker shaped like a pineapple, Eleanor's idea of hospitality. Ironic. I sat in my car across the street, watching through the rain-streaked windshield. Eleanor had summoned the family for what she called an emergency meeting. Daniel had texted me the details, though he hadn't explicitly invited me. I came anyway, briefcase in hand, mobile notary on standby. Because I knew Eleanor, she wasn't done fighting. At 4:15, I walked up the familiar driveway. The door was unlocked, they were expecting me. The house smelled like coffee and Eleanor's nervous energy, that particular mixture of Chanel No. 5 and desperation. They were all in the dining room, the same table where she'd called me worthless. Eleanor at the head, Martin beside her, Daniel and Brielle flanking them, 3 others I recognized as Eleanor's sister, her brother-in-law, and their attorney son, Jeffrey. "Ah," Eleanor said, voice dripping acid. "The new landlord arrives." I set my briefcase on the sideboard. "You asked for a family meeting. Here I am." "We've been discussing options," Jeffrey said, standing. "I've reviewed the documentation. There might be grounds to challenge." "On what basis?" I interrupted. "Usury. The rate was below market. Unconscionability. They were represented by counsel at signing. Fraud. Every document was reviewed and notarized. Undue influence," he said. "You were in a position of trust. I was a daughter-in-law who loaned money to help with medical bills." I corrected. The position of trust was theirs to maintain. They broke it. 18 times. Once for every missed payment. Ava's voice came from my phone, which I'd placed on speaker. "Mr. Jeffrey Palmer. Mr. Palmer, I'm Ava Dempsey, counsel for Red Elm Holdings. Are you suggesting your aunt and uncle lacked capacity to enter into a secured loan agreement 3 years ago?" "No, but..." "Are you suggesting the documents were forged?" "No. Then you have no grounds." The deed in lieu was signed voluntarily, in front of witnesses, with full knowledge of consequences. "It's already recorded." "Already recorded?" Eleanor stood up so fast her chair scraped against the hardwood. "You said we had until January 31st. To vacate," I clarified. "The ownership transferred Friday at 4:12 p.m. when the county recorded the deed." I pulled out my phone, showing the recording confirmation from Noah. "Red Elm Holdings, LLC is now the legal owner of 447 Mapleview Drive." The room erupted. Eleanor screaming about theft, Jeffrey threatening lawsuits, Brielle filming everything, Martin trying to calm everyone down. Only Daniel remained silent, staring at the table where his mother had destroyed our marriage with a single word. "Stop!" Martin's voice cut through the chaos. "Just stop!" Everyone turned to him. "It's done," he said quietly. "We signed. We knew what we were doing. We knew." "Huh, but she manipulated." "No." Martin interrupted his wife. "She offered us a loan when we were desperate. We took it. We stopped paying. She offered us a way out that preserved our credit. We fought it. And now we're tenants in our own..." He caught himself. "In her house." Eleanor sank back into her chair. "You're taking her side." "I'm acknowledging reality," Martin replied. "Something we should have done 18 months ago when we stopped making payments." I opened my briefcase, pulling out a new set of documents. "Since you're all here, Let's discuss the transition. What transition? Eleanor spat. Your tenancy. I slid the papers across the table. Month-to-month lease, beginning February 1st, $2,500 per month, due on the 1st. Standard terms, no pets without permission, no alterations without written consent. Quiet enjoyment provisions. Quiet enjoyment. Eleanor laughed bitterly. You're enjoying this. I'm protecting my investment, I said. Just business, as you'd say if positions were reversed. Jeffrey picked up the lease. This is below market rate. Yes. Why? I looked at Daniel. Despite everything, despite his silence and abandonment, some part of me remembered why I'd married him. Because I'm not cruel. Just practical. Practical, Eleanor repeated. You're destroying our lives and calling it practical. I'm giving you 6 weeks free housing and below market rent thereafter. You destroyed our relationship and called it tough love. I gathered my papers. The difference is, I'm putting my terms in writing. Brielle suddenly spoke up. What about the furniture? The decorations Mom's china? Personal property remains yours, I said. I'm not vindictive. I don't want your things. Just my house. Your house. Eleanor stood again, walking to the window. 28 years we've lived here, raised our children here, built our lives here. And in 3 years, you never once treated me as part of that life. Except when you needed my money. She turned to face me. So what now? You evict us, become our landlord, make us grovel for repairs. Now you have 6 weeks to decide. I said, stay as tenants or find somewhere else. Your choice. Just like it was your choice to call me worthless. Your choice to stop paying. Your choice to refuse every attempt at resolution. My phone buzzed. Noah, confirming the recording details were public record. Anyone could look up the ownership transfer now. One more thing, I said, pulling out a final document. This is a notice of property management transfer. All maintenance requests, rent payments, and property-related correspondence go through Crescent Property Management, not me directly. You're hiring a management company. Daniel finally spoke. I'm maintaining professional boundaries, I replied, looking directly at him. Something this family never learned. So, Jeffrey was still reading the lease. The termination clause, 30 days notice from either party. Correct. You can leave with 30 days notice. Or I can ask you to leave with 30 days notice, assuming no lease violations. So we have no security, Eleanor said. You have exactly what you gave me, I replied. A place to stay as long as it's convenient for the person with power. The grandfather clock chimed 5 o'clock. Same clock that had ticked through Thanksgiving dinner. Same room where everything had shattered. I need an answer by January 15th, I said, heading for the door. Sign the lease or plan to vacate by January 31st. Rachel. I turned. Daniel stood, hands clenched at his sides. Was it worth it? He asked. Was proving your point worth our marriage? I thought about his silence at Thanksgiving, his absence these past weeks, his choice, again and again, to stand with the woman who'd humiliated me rather than the one who'd loved him. Ask your mother, I said. She's the one who decided I was worthless. I just decided to show her what worthless really costs. Eleanor laughed, sharp and bitter. $91,000, apparently. No, I corrected, my hand on the door. It cost you a house. It cost Daniel a marriage. It cost this family any chance at redemption. I looked back one last time. Turns out I wasn't worthless after all. I was just undervalued. Now the market's corrected. I left them there, in what was now my dining room, at what was now my table, in what was now my house. The rain had stopped, and weak December sunlight broke through the clouds, catching the brass pineapple knocker that promised hospitality. By the time I reached my car, my phone showed 3 missed calls from Daniel, 2 from Brielle, and 1 from Jeffrey. I didn't answer any of them. The paperwork was complete. The deed was recorded. I owned the house where I'd been called worthless. And they now lived there at my discretion. The mobile notary's stamp hit the paper at 5:47 p.m. December 22nd. The sound echoed in the dining room like a judge's gavel, final and irrevocable. I watched Eleanor's hand tremble as she set down the pen. She'd just signed the acceptance of deed in lieu, the last signature needed. Martin had signed first, steady and resigned. Now it was my turn. "Ms. Monroe," Patricia the notary said, sliding the final page toward me. "Your signature on the acceptance line, please." The dining room fell silent except for the grandfather clock's ticking. Daniel stood by the window, his back to everyone. Brielle had stopped recording, her phone forgotten in her lap. Jeffrey sat with his head in his hands, defeated by paperwork he couldn't challenge. I picked up the pen. It was the same Mont Blanc Eleanor had given me 3 Christmases ago, when I was still valuable, still family. I'd brought it deliberately. My signature flowed across the page, Rachel Monroe, Managing Member, Red Elm Holdings, LLC. "Now the acknowledgement," Patricia instructed, positioning her stamp. The metallic thud of the seal felt like punctuation, like a period at the end of a very long sentence. Noah's voice crackled through my phone speaker. "I'm ready to e-record the moment you confirm." "Documents are fully executed," I told him. "Please proceed with recording." "Initiating now." The county recorder's office shows a queue time of approximately 12 minutes. 12 minutes until I owned the house where I'd been called worthless. Eleanor stood abruptly, walking to the china cabinet. She pulled out a wine glass crystal, part of her wedding set, and poured herself scotch from Martin's decanter. The amber liquid caught the light as she raised it. "To family," she said, voice dripping venom. "To knowing your place." She drained it in one swallow. Martin warned, what she wanted this moment. "Let her have it." Eleanor poured another. "Tell me, Rachel, how does it feel, stealing an old woman's home?" "Like contract enforcement," I replied, organizing the documents into my briefcase. "Impersonal, legal, necessary." "Necessary," she laughed. "You could have forgiven the debt, written it off, moved on." "Like you moved on from calling me worthless." "Words," she spat. "Just words at a family dinner." "No, words that revealed truth. You never saw me as family. I was just a resource, valuable when you needed $85,000, worthless when you didn't." My phone buzzed. Noah again. "Recording submitted. Estimated completion 5:59 p.m. 3 minutes. Daniel finally turned from the window. "What happens now?" "Now your tenants," I said, "month to month, starting February 1st, unless you choose not to sign the lease. And if we don't, then you vacate by January 31st as specified in the possession agreement you just signed." "You'd throw us out," Eleanor said. "Your husband's parents." "Ex-husband's," I corrected. "The divorce papers will be filed Monday." Daniel's face crumpled. "Rachel, you chose. Daniel. Every time she insulted me, belittled me, diminished me, you chose silence. Well, I've chosen too." Another buzz. "Noah, recording in process. Title update imminent. 1 minute. Jeffrey stirred, lifting his head. "For what it's worth, the paperwork is bulletproof. Clean transfer, proper consideration, all requirements met. You did this right." "I learned from the best," I said. 3 years at Harbor and Field taught me that contracts don't care about feelings." "Is that what we were?" Daniel asked. "A contract. We were supposed to be partners, but you voided that agreement when you let her call me worthless." My phone rang. Noah's name on the screen. "Ms. Monroe, recording complete. Document number 2024-445879. Red Elm Holdings. LLC is now the legal owner of record for 447 Mapleview Drive. Congratulations." "Thank you, Noah." I hung up and looked around the room. My room now. My dining table. My chandelier casting golden light on their stunned faces. "I signed the deed to their house," I said quietly, more to myself than them. "To my house." Eleanor hurled her glass against the wall. It shattered, crystal fragments catching the light like tears. The scotch ran down the wallpaper I now owned. "You'll need to repair that," I said calmly. "Damage beyond normal wear and tear is the tenant's responsibility." "Get out," Eleanor hissed. "Gladly. But remember you get out by January 31st, unless you sign the lease." I picked up my briefcase, Patricia the notary following. At the doorway, I turned back one last time. "The funny thing is, Eleanor, if you'd just been kind or even just civil, none of this would have happened. I would have forgiven the debt eventually. Written it off as family helping family. But you had to be cruel. You had to make it clear I was nothing to you." "You are nothing," she said, voice raw. "Paper doesn't change that." "No," I agreed, "but it does change who owns this house." I pulled out the new keys Noah had messengered over. I'd changed the locks effective February 1st, after their leaseback expired. "These will be mine to use soon," I said, letting them catch the light. "Every door, every room, every inch of the house you built with your sweat and sacrifice. Mine." Martin spoke for the first time in minutes. "We'll sign the lease." "Martin." Eleanor turned on him. "We have nowhere else to go. No money for another place. She's offering below market rent. I'd rather live in my car than rent from her." "Then that's your choice," I said. "But make it by January 15th. That's when the lease offer expires." I left them there, in my house, surrounded by their furniture that would soon need to be moved or stay at my discretion. Patricia followed me out, maintaining professional silence until we reached the driveway. "Rough family situation," she said carefully. "Not anymore," I replied. "They're just tenants now." As I drove away, I saw the dining room light go out, then another, the house going dark room by room, as if in mourning, but I felt no guilt, only the clean satisfaction of papers properly filed, documents legally recorded, and justice served cold with a notary's seal. I'd signed the deed to their house, and Eleanor was right about one thing I did know my place now. It was at the top of the property records. As the legal owner of everything she'd spent 28 years calling hers, the clock on my dashboard showed 6:15 p.m. I owned the house where I'd been called worthless. And in 39 days, they'd either be my tenants or my former problem. Either way, I'd won. Not with cruelty or rage or vindictive glee, but with paper, signatures, and the cold precision of contract law, exactly as worthless people do. The December cold bit through my coat as I stood on the front porch of 447 Mapleview Drive at 6:30 p.m. My house now, though the Grants still occupied it for another 39 days. The brass pineapple knocker gleamed in the porch light, that promise of hospitality that had always been a lie. Noah had sent the final confirmation email with the recording details. The deed transfer officially registered in the county system. Red Elm Holdings, LLC appeared as the owner of record, clean, legal, irreversible. I pulled out the new keys, feeling their weight in my palm. They'd be active February 1st, the morning after the Grant's leaseback expired. Every lock would be changed overnight. I'd already scheduled the locksmith. My phone buzzed. A text from Daniel. "You got what you wanted?" I typed back, "No." I got what I was owed. The front door opened. Martin stood there, looking older than his 64 years. Behind him, I could hear Eleanor crying, not the dramatic sobs of anger, but the quiet tears of defeat. "The lease," he said simply. "We'll sign it." I pulled the documents from my briefcase. $2,500 per month. First and last month due at signing. Security deposit waived given the circumstances. "Generous," he said without irony. "Practical. I want tenants who pay, not a vacant property." He took the papers. "Rachel, for what it's worth." "It's worth nothing." I cut him off. "Just like I was, according to Eleanor." "She didn't." "She did, and you all let her." I handed him a business card. "Crescent Property Management. All communication goes through them after February 1st. "So we won't deal with you directly?" "No. You'll deal with a professional management company, just like any other tenants. Through the doorway, I saw the dining room where everything had started. The table was bare now, the crystal swept up, the scotch stain already darkening on the wallpaper. Eleanor sat in her chair at the head of the table, my table now staring at nothing. "Mom!" Daniel appeared, touching her shoulder. "Come away from there." She looked up at him, then through the doorway at me. Our eyes met for a long moment. The woman who'd called me worthless, the woman whose house I now owned. "I hope you're satisfied," she said, voice hoarse. "I'm documented," I replied. "Satisfaction is irrelevant. The transfer is complete." I turned to leave, then stopped. One more thing to do. From my briefcase, I pulled out a manila folder. Inside were copies of every email she'd sent 3 years ago, begging for help, every promise to repay, every thank you when I'd wired the money that saved them from medical bankruptcy. "These are yours," I said, handing the folder to Martin. A reminder of when I had value to this family. Keep them or burn them. I don't need them anymore. I walked down the porch steps, my footsteps echoing on the wood I now owned. Behind me, I heard the door close with a soft click. At my car. I looked back one more time. The house stood solid in the winter darkness, windows glowing with warm light. In 6 weeks, I could stand on this same spot with full authority to enter any door, inspect any room, make any change I wanted. But I wouldn't. I'd manage it through Crescent, collect rent, maintain the property, and never set foot inside again. This was business now, not personal. The personal had ended when Eleanor called me worthless. My phone showed 6:45 p.m. as I drove away. In my briefcase sat the recorded deed, the proof of ownership, the end of their control over that house and over me. I'd walked into Thanksgiving dinner as Rachel Monroe, the daughter-in-law trying to keep peace, willing to endure insults for the sake of family harmony. I drove away as Rachel Monroe, managing member of Red Elm Holdings, LLC, owner of the house where I'd been deemed worthless. The transformation was complete, not through anger or revenge fantasies or dramatic confrontations, but through paperwork, properly executed, through signatures, legally binding, through a deed, officially recorded. I'd signed the deed to their house. Every signature had been a declaration I am not worthless. I have value. I have power. I have rights. And now I had their house. The dashboard clock turned to 7 p.m. as I pulled into my apartment complex. Inside, Daniel's belongings were already half-packed, boxes stacked by the door. The divorce papers lay on the kitchen counter, waiting for Monday's filing. I poured myself a glass of wine, not Eleanor's crystal, just my simple everyday glass, and stood by the window. Somewhere across town, the Grants were probably still processing what had happened, how the worthless daughter-in-law had become their landlord, how their house had become my property, how their cruelty had become their undoing. I took a sip of wine and smiled, not from joy or vindication, but from the simple satisfaction of completion. The debt was settled, the contracts were fulfilled, the deed was signed, recorded, and delivered. Eleanor had been wrong about me being worthless, but she'd been right about one thing. I definitely knew my place now. It was on the deed to her house, my house. The clock on the wall showed 7:15 p.m. The recording office was long closed. The transfer was complete. The Grants were now tenants in what had been their home for 28 years. And I owned every brick, every board, every square inch of the place where I'd been called worthless. The wine tasted like victory, cold, practical, and perfectly legal victory. I raised my glass to the empty apartment. To knowing your place, I said to no one. Then I set down the glass, closed my laptop, and began preparing for my new life as a landlord. The story was over, the deed was done, and I had won exactly what I was owed. Nothing more, nothing less. Just a house and the proof that I was never worthless after all. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I'd love to know where you're tuning in from. Drop a comment below and let's connect. If you enjoyed this tale of contracts and consequences, please subscribe to the channel and share your thoughts. Did Rachel go too far, or did Eleanor get what she deserved? I read every comment and would love to hear your perspective on this story of family, betrayal, and legal revenge.